Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm a bit sick, but feeling much, much better. I've come out the other side and just in time to discuss a tremendously entertaining and interesting and head-scratching, just what a card UFC 269 was. We had a crazy main event. We had possibly the biggest and dumbest upset of all time in the co-main event. And in addition to my usual co-host, Phil McKenzie, we are very happy to be joined by possibly the one man on the internet who called that co-main event upset correctly, from the MMAratings.com and the MMA Ratings podcast, crafty fighter extraordinaire and fellow fight camp scout, Schwan Humes. Thank you, Schwan. It's so good to have you on the show at long last.
Yeah, thank you very much for letting me be on the show. I've known Connor for years, and even though we're friends, he told me, if you want to get on this show, you're going to have to earn it, pal. So calling Holly Holm over Ronda Rousey, he said, yeah, that's nice. That's cool. I said, calling Miesha Tate over Holly Holm, yeah, that's pretty good, okay, Schwan. But what are you writing about? So I wrote an article breaking down Captain America's fighting style on the website, MMAratings.net, the most viewed article for the past 3 years. He said, well, that's cool, but what about international? So then I broke down how Joanna was going to beat Andrade. That broke records over there. He goes, Schwan, that's good, but I need some real work.
Yeah.
Okay, I took Kimo to the Risen Grand Prix Championship. Okay, but I need something else. And I'm like, damn it, Connor. What will it take? And finally, Julianna Pena, we did it. You got the championship, and I got my championship, my first appearance on Heavy Hands Podcast.
Now, I will say, Phil and we gave that fight about 2 minutes of discussion.
No, I listened to the episode. Oh, my God. I felt so dumb. I made my prediction. I'm like, oh, my God, this is going to be bad. They don't see anything. They don't see anything.
No, but even so, I listened back, and we didn't even do as badly as I suggested, because we did say, if this was the Julianna Pena we used to see, who we could trust to just be a madcap pressure fighter, she'd probably have a good shot. We just thought she'd gotten much, much worse at striking and wouldn't do the right things. And also, who cared? She didn't earn the title shot. It was not a compelling fight for any reason, unless if you're Schwan and you can just see the upsets coming, like looking out and seeing the Matrix swirling around you.
The worst part about this is I know people in Amanda Nunes' camp, and I told him, I'm like, look, dude, I got some ideas on this. You might want to listen to me. No, we got it. Okay.
Well, folks, don't ignore him next time. So anyway, it's Heavy Hands. We are going to talk about Pena and Nunes, a fight which, I have to admit, got a lot more interesting after the fact. But we're going to talk about a lot of other UFC 269 stuff as well. Of course, the main event, Charles Oliveira defeated Dustin Poirier in what I consider one of the ballsier gambit performances I think I've seen. A lot of people out there praising Chucky Olives' body work. A lot of people also not noticing that he got fucking destroyed while going for that body work for about the first 5 minutes. We've also got, a lot of this stuff is probably going to end up as a bonus because we've got Lewis versus Dalkaus coming up next week, and we're going to try to touch on that. But there was a lot of interesting stuff on 269's undercard. We had Kai Kara-France knocking out Cody Garbrandt. I have a lot to say about that fight. Sean O'Malley looked pretty good against Raulian Paiva. I know he's an annoying douche, but the guy's got some skills. Josh Emmett, Dan Ige, I thought was a pretty interesting fight where both guys made some nice, it was sort of both guys sort of fighting against themselves and their own tendencies. And as a result, they both got to make some nice adjustments. I enjoyed that. Dominic Cruz over Pedro Munoz, all types of stuff. If you don't hear any of that over the course of this episode, make sure you check out the Heavy Hands Patreon, where just $3 a month will get you access to all of our bonus episodes. All right. The main event. Chucky Olives. Dustin Poirier. Now, Schwan, what was your prediction for this one before we get into breaking it down? Because Phil and
I really liked Oliveira in this fight, my biggest
of course you did, you fucking prick.
Was that Poirier recently, he's basically been involved in striking matchups. He hasn't really fought in MMA in a while, except outside of Khabib. And I felt that his biggest advantage, of course, was on the feet, but he's fairly one-dimensional in the striking. I felt Charles Oliveira was closer to him on the striking than he was to Oliveira in the wrestling and the grappling. So I figured with using more tools, having a length advantage, and being a fairly fast starter, I felt it worse he could be 50-50 with Dustin Poirier. But if it ever got into tie-ups or takedowns or grappling exchanges, it's like 80-20.
Man,
best for Poirier.
In hindsight, looking at how those, I don't know how you feel, Phil, but in hindsight, looking at those grappling exchanges, it's really hard not to feel like, man, I should have seen this coming. Because the whole thing of Poirier just not getting enough experience against grapplers, I think arguably his grappling game sort of diminishing as a result over time. But also, we already knew Poirier's sort of fixation on like offensive tricks. And I think also if we'd watched like the Khabib fight or the Korean Zombie fight or any other times where he's actually had to grapple, we could have also foreseen what I thought was a real sort of hesitance and uncertainty when being made to defend against a really aggressive, skilled grappler.
But we kind of did.
Yeah, but
Right?
I just didn't. It was like two crucially, questionable decisions. I have talked to like Tom Grant and Ben Tapa on Twitter about this, and both of them, like for example, that roll in round 2, where Chucky Olives, people were mostly upset about the glove grab, although for most of that exchange, it wasn't a glove grab; it was just a wrist tie. He did, I think, put his fingers in the glove.
I think it's super hard to tell, but
yeah, it is. I think he definitely put his fingers in the cuff of the glove at one point there. And Poirier rolled and was just way too slow in the scramble. He was reacting to Oliveira. Oliveira had all the initiative, and he beat him in the scramble without even seeming to try. And then Poirier didn't want to create any scrambles at all from his back for the rest of the round because he was so worried about giving up his back to Charles Oliveira. That kind of stuff feels like worse than I think I really allowed myself to realize, but really like I should have seen it coming. Which I think is what I said when Khabib beat him too. So there's a case in point. I don't learn. Schwan?
Yeah, I like Dustin Poirier, but it's like he's one of those fighters who, and I won't say he's not a front runner in the truest sense of that, but he's a guy who, in my opinion, is a different guy when he has certain advantages. Over Conor McGregor, there's clear advantages and ways to exploit him. Same thing against who's that guy, Dan Hooker?
Yeah.
Or there's clear ways to exploit them, whether it's physically or Max Holloway. Clear advantages you have to give you a clear, obvious path to success. Against Charles Oliveira, most people think the path to success is just to punish him because he's going to quit. They're not paying attention to defensive improvements. They're not paying attention to his mentality or the fact he's a champion, the momentum that takes from you. They're not paying attention to any of that stuff. They're just saying, if I can get to him, I can get him out of there. And I think Dustin Poirier believes that 9 times out of 10 against most fighters, if he can get through rough spots, he can get to him, he can take him out. But he didn't have a clear path to victory outside of just beating Charles Oliveira up. If he couldn't beat him up, what was he going to do? Technically outstrike him? Yeah, in a boxing match, maybe. But Oliveira uses more weapons.
Yeah.
He's got longer weapons. And we already know that in 2/3 of the fight, you can't even compete with them. Yeah. And not only can you compete with them, it's like you and Patrick used to say, you're conceding ranges. You're not even willing to engage because you're so fearful of being finished or being put in a bad position. So he's got all the momentum because he'll engage you everywhere, and you'll only engage him in one. And in that one area, y'all are close. In the other areas, he's got a huge advantage, and you're scared to do anything. So you can't be effectively defensively on the counter or offensively.
Yeah. That was the thing, man. Oliveira's confidence was just overflowing. A fight that it reminded me of, because as you said, the variety of Oliveira's offense was big. He was getting boxed up pretty badly for a lot of round 1. Dustin Poirier is great on the counter, and he was nailing Oliveira with some counter right hooks, some nice pull counter left hands, all sorts of stuff. Never went to the body. That definitely stood out to me. Oliveira was going frequently to the body. He was coming up with answers to those counters upstairs. He had the like slip uppercut as a counter to Dustin's left hand, for example. But it reminded me of John Jones, Daniel Cormier 2. Because
that's a good comparison.
That was a fight where like Jones he just didn't seem to care if he didn't necessarily win the first round. His entire focus was on doing a trite of damage, on working the body, and slowing Cormier down for the later stages of the fight. And Cormier had a lot of success landing to the head. Jones, it just didn't bother him. He was like, yeah, I'm going to get hit some. Some of these exchanges are going to be 50-50 or worse. As long as I'm getting in a good dig to the body, I know I'm going to be there later to capitalize. And that felt like Charles Oliveira's mentality, except that, unlike Jones in that fight, he was like getting dropped and rocked. And I have to say, I've said, again, I don't learn. I've said many times, maybe I should stop doubting Charles Oliveira or expecting him to quit. I got to tell you, Schwan, looking at Amanda Nunes makes me even less certain that fighters ever really do change their deepest tendencies. But it is remarkable, right, that Charles Oliveira did go from a guy who used to get pressured into sort of mentally wearing out to a guy who is just willing to spend durability, like he's just strapped with cash, like he doesn't give a fuck. He's so confident. He's just willing to let you hit him if it means he's en route to a game plan that gets him to win. That is not the Charles Oliveira I used to know. Phil, what were you going to say? You think so?
Well, I mean, I think it's a bit of a contradiction, right? Is that you can say like people are always going to be themselves, but like, is Charles Oliveira totally different now? I mean, I think what we saw is that because we used to talk about Dustin Poirier not as a bit of a front runner and a bit of a bully, but then he had these fights against Gaethje and against Alvarez and against Hooker and so on, and Holloway, where he could just grit through incredibly tough fights.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh well, is Dustin Poirier just incredibly mentally durable now? And I think the answer is always like, yes, within certain contexts. And
maybe it's not. You can never. There
are certain fighters who are like. There are certain fighters who are, we've talked about it before. They are like genuinely mentally unbreakable. They are completely insane.
Yeah.
But they are very rare. Like, like Prime Carlos Condit or whatever, who just doesn't have any thought.
Yeah, your average human doesn't want to die.
That's actually a really, really great point. I on both ends, on the ends with Dustin, because it works for both fighters. On Dustin, even when he was losing against Hooker isn't a better technical striker than him. Hooker's not a bigger puncher than him. Hooker can't wrestle with him, and Hooker can't grapple with him. So even though he's losing, in the back of your mind, I have all these advantages. So it's like if you grapple someone and you let them put you in a position because you're working on getting out of it,
right?
You don't go fight because you can get out of it. There's no real pressure. So, but when you get in a fight and somebody puts you in that position, you can't get out of it. All of a sudden you crumble because you don't have these advantages.
Yeah, that's
what I think for Justin. And on the behalf of Oliveira, everybody kept telling me he's fragile, but I saw him go rounds against Anthony Pettis taking a fair. The difference to me is now he knows how to use his offensive tools better, so he's not serving himself up, and defensively he's better. So even though he's still taking the beating, he's probably taking like 15% less of a beating than he would normally.
Yeah.
And that 15% might be enough for him to hang on and navigate. It doesn't have to be much.
I think it's
also like Sergio Martinez. They can't hit him the way they want to hit him, and that's the difference.
Yeah. Go on, Phil.
Sorry.
I think it's also that, like, what is this person's, like, breakage condition? Like, what are the things which really get to them? And I think it's a common thing. Like, Poirier typically, like, in a lot of his losses, he got out grappled. Like,
sure. Cub Swanson, Korean Zombie.
Like, yeah, Cub Swanson, the last round of their fight, Korean Zombie. Like, and you saw against, Khabib that he viscerally hates being out grappled in a way which he doesn't. He just doesn't being outstruck. Yeah. And with Charles Oliveira, it's the same thing. It's also that he doesn't like getting out grappled. He doesn't like being worked on from the top position. That is typically what has kind of broken, that and body shots are the two things that have tended to break his confidence.
Yeah.
And they mostly kind of haven't been there. Particularly it was with the Nunes thing where I was just like, oh my God, it's Nunes from 10 years ago.
Right.
I did both that and the Poirier fight just made me think maybe you just never do change. Maybe just the conditional way in which you can be broken. You just have to make sure that doesn't happen, or you don't necessarily come into fights where that can happen.
So you say you don't fix the problem, you just learn how to navigate the
That
limitation.
is exactly what I was going to say. I think it's what the lesson of this card, or the main event and the co-main event, seems to be compare Charles Oliveira showing a kind of toughness that if you've seen some fights in the past where he gets broken, or vice versa, Dustin Poirier, if you've seen him fight Justin Gaethje, and then you see this, you'd be like, what happened? Where'd his confidence go?
Mental durability isn't a score.
Right.
It's not
right. And you compare that to...
You've got 90 mental durability points out of 100.
Right. And then you compare that to Amanda Nunes after years of seeming to have solved it, falling back into her old ways. This was truly a classic Amanda Nunes loss.
Something I always tell fighters when I work with them? I tell them, don't attack the technique because we can refine, diversify, and adjust the technique. Attack the character. Make that fighter prove he's different. If they don't respond to pressure, keep pressuring them until they show you all fight long they can handle pressure. But if you give a round and take a round off, you gave him that release. Second round, you get the guy with confidence back. Now Third round, the pressure didn't work. You didn't give him pressure for 3 rounds straight. You gave him pressure for 1 round, eased off the gas, and then gave him another round of pressure. Their confidence is back by now.
Yeah.
You should have stayed on them.
I think that, that's the lesson I'm taking from this card is that, and particularly these two fights, is that you don't really change. That's very, very, very uncommon. But there are many ways to sort of paper over or navigate around, as you put it, Schwan, your inherent deep-seated flaws. And for Dustin Poirier, we've seen so many times that he can navigate a fight really bravely, but as soon as he's taken out of a position where he can hit you really hard for whatever you're doing to make him so uncomfortable, he still kind of folds like he used to. And Charles Oliveira, on the other hand, has kind of always been a crazy, reckless pressure fighter. Remember his fight with Frankie Edgar? That was just him walking through fire for 3 rounds. But unless you are smothering him and limiting him to one phase or another, his confidence is not going to shake. Or apparently, if the Max Holloway fight is any indication, just hit him in the body a bunch really early in the fight. That's interesting. Charles Oliveira. Anything else to say on that before we take a break and move on? Anything else stand out to you guys?
I'm concerned for Justin Gaethje because he's essentially maybe a different version of Dustin Poirier, a different style matchup as far as the skill set, but almost the same style as far as what breaks both guys.
Yeah, I the only difference I think I can see between those two, I'm still interested to see Gaethje Oliveira. For one thing, Gaethje lands the same shots round 1. Who knows if he doesn't knock Oliveira out? But the thing I'm curious about is the tenacity with which Gaethje typically scrambles. That was a problem for Poirier. Here's the thing that threw me. Right, again, I talked to Tom Grant, Ben Tapa, two guys with a lot of grappling experience and knowledge, and they looked at that omoplata leg lock threat that got Dustin Poirier to roll and give up top position for the entirety of round 2, and they understood his action. They basically said his mistake was not scrambling quickly enough or not being ready for Oliveira's reaction to that Granby roll. But it still seems at odds to me for him to make that sudden, like, rash decision. I guess maybe it isn't. The problem is then in round 3, he gets put on, like, all fours in a rear waist cinch, and he basically just sat there for 10 seconds until Oliveira climbed on his back. And then sort of sat in back mount, just defending, like, 4 chokes in a row. Like, when Anthony Pettis fought Charles Oliveira back mounted him, like, 5 times, and Pettis just repeatedly spun out of it. That does show.
Pettis back mounted Dustin Poirier, and he didn't seem like, and he got out of it.
There is something there where there's, like, specific fighters. I feel like Poirier gets in his head. About how dangerous.
I think he's always had that in him to an extent, but I also think he got a bit of PTSD from the Khabib fight.
That is another thing that has occurred to me. But it's only in grappling.
It was a lot of weird. It was a lot of, like, it was the decision making of a very scared person. The thing with the like the ground situation in round 2 for me that made me think, like, I thought the weird thing was that he didn't even try to get to do anything, and I think it's fine to, like, just give up the position or whatever. You know, it's an understandable thing if you're like, oh, I'm Dustin Poirier, 5-round fighter, and he's Charles Oliveira. You might think, okay, I can give up a round, fine. I still don't understand why you wouldn't try and get up or do anything in the last 30 seconds of the round where he's not going to submit you.
Yeah, sure, right?
Like, because then you need to find out that. You need to find out, you know, at least how this guy's going to attack you in the grappling.
That's a great idea.
And you want to be able to, like, can I try and get out the next time? I have a 30 seconds to do this in.
You can scout.
He's not tapping.
You can use the last 20 seconds of the round to scout the next scramble you come across.
Yeah, but instead he was just like, no, I'm just staying here. I'm not going anywhere. And then the next round happened, and it was sort of over. He was
clearly very anxious.
But before we end, can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
Like, in my opinion, Poirier is kind of a slow starter, and he lets guys get momentum. And in this fight, he seemed to come out a little bit more aggressively. Do you feel that kind of backfired, like where he didn't, like, maybe he's in his mind thinking about the things we're talking about, but physically he was a step slower? Because usually in the second round is when he starts coming on, but he came out kind of hard in that first round, so maybe that energy reserve he usually had didn't exist.
Yeah, I think the body work from Oliveira must have taken a toll. There was a lot of it, a lot of front kicks. By the way, I do really appreciate that this is the era of the teep finally finding its place in MMA. The teep is a killer fucking strike. It's a jab, except it's longer. And don't listen to anyone who tells you that it is a quote-unquote push kick. It hurts. It fucking sucks to eat a well-thrown teep to the pit of the stomach. It is worse than a body jab, and body jabs also suck. If you've seen Floyd Mayweather's body jab, that shit has stopping power for a reason. You do not want to run into it. Anyway, I think the body work took a toll. I don't think Dustin Poirier, his thought after the fight was, like the quote at the press conference was, I brawled and I shouldn't have brawled. I don't think he made a decision to come out hot early. I think it was Oliveira's pressure. Oliveira was all over him.
Yeah.
He just wouldn't go away. Even as he was getting dropped and rattled, he refused to let Dustin Poirier have a moment's rest while working his body constantly. So,
Patrick Wyman special. Don't concede a range.
That's, hey, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a hell of a performance in Charles Oliveira. I don't know, so I guess what we're saying is, like, who's going to be the guy? Is there a guy in the division right now who does have what it takes to break Oliveira, to bring out classic Oliveira in the way that we, as we're about to discuss, saw Julianna Pena bring out classic Amanda Nunes?
I mean, I'm not entirely sure that you need that, and that, like, it could just be one of these times where someone horribly drops him and they just finish him off. Like, he doesn't necessarily need to be broken.
That's 2 fights in a row.
What's that?
I still think Conor can beat him. I know he's.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
I think McGregor beats him.
Fastest starter in the sport. That's 2 fights in a row where Oliveira gets dropped bad in the first round. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, I mean, my primary thing watching these fights is like the same thing with like the Chandler fight, in that we picked the Chandler fight right and this fight wrong. But like the main thing was that like these were 50-50 fights, and I just watched them and I was just like, yeah, that's what they felt like.
Yeah.
It's like this guy just got dropped twice.
Hectic.
and then completely dominated the grappling.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I feel, but I mean, you know, in some ways we should also appreciate just, I mean, Chucky Olives as an insane
God.
action fighter. Like, this was an amazing offensive performance of like.
This is already the
as
greatest.
You said, like walking through offense to deliver his own. Like, he's always been like a brilliant transitional striker, but like just amazing clinch work and like ability to chain his strikes into his clinch work. And just, you know, the fact that this is going to be 3 fights in a row where we get to see, you know, basically an absolute no doubt absolute lock. Like, these are top 10 most exciting fighters of all time in Oliveira, Poirier, and Gaethje fighting each other.
Yeah, this is going to be the most exciting title reign
for the belt. Like, this is the thrilling Robbie Lawler title reign period of the lightweight division.
That's exactly the name I was going to drop. Most exciting title reign since Robbie Lawler. All right, let's take a break then, fellas. When we come back, the women's bantamweight title fight, Julianna Pena against long odds. I haven't actually looked at the numbers to find out if this was numerically the biggest upset of all time, but it was the silliest. It definitely, sometimes the solution to an opponent, a vaunted, scary opponent, is so simple. All you can really do watching it play out is kind of laugh. We're going to talk about that and give Schwan a chance for some well-earned gloating after this break.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
All right, welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are moving on down the UFC 269 lineup, which means we come to the moment, if you are our guest, Mr. Schwan Humes. Julianna Pena defeated Amanda Nunes. And again, I will maintain in what I found to be exceedingly comical fashion. I'm gonna tell now, Schwan. I'm sure you will have a very nuanced take on this that will play off of what I'm sure was an extremely accurate prediction. I'm just going to go ahead and say this: Julianna Pena won because she does a slip jab. That's about it. She does a slip jab, and she wouldn't go away. She stayed in Nunes' face and agreed to punch with her. And apparently, that's all that's really needed to turn Amanda Nunes right back into the woman who lost to Kat Zingano. You know, how many years ago was that now? In 2014. That's the last fight that really felt like this. Frankly, I do think a lot of people's impulse here, Schwan, has been to be like, oh, Amanda Nunes had an off night. Can we all agree Valentina Shevchenko would have beaten this Amanda Nunes? Because, yeah, that's exactly the kind of fight Valentina loves to have. But I think people are forgetting there was evidence that the Nunes we used to know and love was in there all the while, because that Chris Cyborg fight was pretty much this. This response to being invited to a brawl was just to say, oh, yeah, hell yeah, I'll brawl until I get tired and lose. Slip jab, don't go away. What more do you have to add to that, Schwan? How did Pena do it?
Well, the biggest thing is like this kind of echoes the Ronda thing in the instance that what Holly Holm did against Ronda, people said was so brand new. It was just a variation of what Bethe Correia did unsuccessfully. And in the moving off the line, countering Ronda, she just couldn't. Her footwork her power didn't hold up. So that's what hindered her. Ronda being a better athlete against Amanda Nunes. What people kept forgetting, they're like, well, Amanda solved her. She's training full time. Her cardio is much better. I never bought into that. I know people she trains with. I told her, I don't believe that. I think y'all are lying. Her cardio is still a fraud. Well, she beat so-and-so 145. That's 145. That's completely different. At 35, her cardio is still very suspect. And the reason it doesn't get exposed is because she does either finishes people right away or she does so much damage they really can't pressure her. They can't really engage with her past a certain point. They're just in survival mode.
Well, that's the thing.
Michelle Pennington.
Even in these 5-round wins, and she's had quite a few that went the distance, they do tend to be notably slower paced than the first round wins. Where like that exactly. is the solution is to scare the opponent into agreeing to have a slower fight. It's sort of like Marlon Moraes is the same kind of fighter, albeit I think significantly more technical, more polished than Nunes. Or like Shaman Moraes is a similar kind of fighter. Like either your power shocks the other person into having a fight that at a pace you can maintain, or you finish them early, or they finish you. That seems to be that's the core Amanda Nunes.
Exactly, and when she does that damage, it fools fans and casuals because they're like, oh, the person decelerated. That's why they're not. Well, you're getting beat up. You're not going to be able to generate the same offense and pressure against her as you did before. But they start saying it's a form of dominance. Amanda took her foot off the gas, and it's back to the Floyd Mayweather. I made it easy on myself and made it hard for myself, which is spinning the facts of what actually happens in the fight.
Yeah.
So when I've seen her in these fights, the fights where she's been extended in, she still hasn't looked great. Against Valentina Shevchenko, when she went for the finish and got dead tired, Valerie beat her within an inch of her life. Yeah. She was just able to size in her athleticism and navigate that towards the end of the fight. In the first fight against Durandamy, she almost finished Durandamy in the first round. Second round, Durandamy's beating her within an inch of her life. At one point in the fight, Durandamy almost triangled her. That's how tired she was.
Literally, Durandamy would be champion right now if she knew how to wrestle at all.
Exactly.
That was how that fight played out.
If she was a middle school wrestler, she would have the title right now.
That's right.
But and then it's like that. And once again, to put the Jackson Wing connection there, they're not great with technique, but they're great with strategies. Holly Holm tried to extend Cyborg by slowing the fight down and pushing her over against the cage so it would look more competitive. Against Amanda Nunes, Holly Holm was trying to push the pace, but Amanda kept taking her down, so Holly was like, no, get right back up. Force her to take me back down again. In the transition, Nunes caught her, wiped her out. But I just kept seeing nobody had the guts to really attack her cardio because they were afraid of what's coming back. Holly Holm tried, and you saw what happened to her, so then people started backing back off of her again. Yeah. But you've already seen that she can't fight at pace. She can't get into extended exchanges. Either she wins them or she scares you off, so you give her a break. The thing about Julianna Pena is she's not good anywhere. Like striking, she's in. Grappling, she's in. Wrestling, she's in. But she won't concede any range. She will fight you at every single range. You have to fight her, as Teddy Atlas says, for every single inch of real estate you have. Yeah. And that fighter is dangerous to themselves because they can always be finished because they're constantly in the line of fire. But guess what else? They're dangerous to you because you can't get a moment's rest. They're not going to back off because you crack them in the face. They're going to jump right back on you. You take them down, they're going to try and reverse or get position. If you start trying to bully them, they're going to try to bully you back. And that's why I told people, Amanda is good, but the fact of the matter is when she doesn't have those safety zones that her power creates, like Mikey Garcia, his power dictates his defense. When you're not afraid of his power, he's average. Right. When you're not afraid of Amanda Nunes' power, she's average too. And all the grappling, the black belt and judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that all follows when she dominates you on the feet. Yeah. So when she do that, her whole plan falls apart, and she knows that she can't fight at pace. She knows that she can't. And Julianna Pena figured that out early. I figured it out too. And I was like, all Julianna has to do is get through the first round. Nunes is going to get her in some rough spots. Nunes is going to push the pace on her. And if she doesn't finish her in that first round, it's a wrap for Nunes. And if you listen to her coaches afterwards, they said the same thing. That grappling exchange, that wasn't what we wanted. Julianna Pena, she was tired in that grappling exchange. Second round comes, and the same way she faded in the second round against Duran me is the same thing that happened here. Same way she faded against Zingano, same thing here. Somebody was able to survive, navigate those rough spots, maintain the pressure, and then all that technique and all that poise and all that conditioning went out the window. And one last thing, part of the reason she was getting beat up is because Amanda's not good on the lead. She's good on the counter.
Yeah.
She's good pressuring you, making you swing and cleaning you up. That's how she got Cyborg. If Cyborg would have used a jab, Cyborg would have beat her.
I'm saying, man. It is so close to just being straight up luck of the draw. That's honestly, though, that Cyborg lost that fight. Like, it was as much a 50-50 brawl as this. Cyborg should have just been a little more technical. The funny thing is that, again, like, it was just a slip jab. That was such a huge part of the success that Pena ended up having in these exchanges. That, to me, is like, what more do you need to hear to, like, indict this goddamn division? Like, I am not a hater of women's MMA by any stretch of the imagination. I love women's 115. I think it's a fantastic division. I like good fights in any division when I see them. I'm excited about, Amanda Lemos. I'm excited about, I just, like, all you have to do to successfully punch with Nunes, I mean, you got to have some durability and some grit. That is something that Pena has to a degree that past challengers have not. Pennington, gets shine as like a gritty fighter, but when it came down to it, she was not willing to punch with Nunes.
Nope.
That is, in fact, a rare thing because Nunes hits like a truck.
Because she didn't have a dipping jab.
But that's the other thing is, like, on a technical level.
And Pennington's supposed to be a boxer.
Yes, right. But on a technical level,
a dipping jab.
All you need, there is an exchange in this fight where Pena throws, they exchange 4 jabs in a row. Like, you could literally, it is like a steady tempo of, like, not a particularly fast song. Dong, dong, dong. And each time, Nunes steps in with the same jab, and Pena slip jabs and hits Nunes in the face. This happens 4 times in quick succession. And Amanda just couldn't adjust to it. Like, the idea of being able to move your head and jab at the same time, she couldn't figure it out. That was crazy to me. Like,
you think that she never had to.
Yeah. Yeah, she just hasn't.
Yeah, I mean,
go on, Phil.
Because, the two things about Nunes is that her defense is always like her reach. Just fact, she has tremendous like length. She fights pretty long. She's just like a really long, straight, mechanically sound puncher. And if she doesn't have reach, or if she's up against someone who can, who actually has like some measure of technical skill or a combination of these things,
or just
she can out-wrestle people.
One technique.
Yeah. But then it was like she was up against someone who's nominally a wrestler, and they just threw one strike which was designed to bypass her reach, and she just looked at it, like it was like, I mean, partially it had to be like, lots of people have said this, but I mean, they really both looked like they were like fighting in a dream. Like, she just couldn't believe that someone who was looking this ugly in her punching form was like somehow starting to beat her to the punch.
I think it's crazy to lay this all at the feet of Nunes looking bad, but I definitely don't think there's any reason to say that she didn't think Pena was going to beat her.
I mean, because like even when I was watching it, it was shocking. Because I was just like, even the glancing shots that Nunes was landing on her as she was dipping were like, you could see that you could just physically see in every way that she hits like 5 times as hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was. Like I said something like this on Twitter, but it was like watching Cody Garbrandt getting out punched by Betch Coher. Yeah. And as such, I would like to nominate this for Fight of the Year because, all that stupid drama before the actual card, which has thankfully now been mostly forgotten, about like DC and Cruz and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Where people were talking about, should commentary be snarky and annoying, or should it be lazy? And I was like, yeah. I mean, But, the whole thing is that, like, should MMA commentary be good at all? Because I was thinking, the person who's given me the most joy in MMA commentary is still Mike Goldberg.
Absolutely.
I went back to listen to Mike Goldberg's Greatest Hits Part 2, and you just get to listen to him being like, his corner speaks to him in 2 languages. He understands them both. And I was like, this is truly MMA. And I was watching this fight. I'm like, I don't know if any fight's going to give me more joy this year than this fight did.
This is the best of MMA. It's just when, like, the solution is so simple that even the person actively losing can't fucking believe what is happening.
Both of them couldn't believe. Like, Pena afterwards looked like she didn't even look that happy.
She was shocked.
Absolutely gobsmacked.
She was shocked. Yeah, she was clearly in a state of shock. She beat her, and then she went over to her corner and was like, she was saying, I think she looked at DC and said, "I told you," and it was very much clear that she was trying to convince herself that it had actually just happened. It really did have a big upset feeling. But
Connor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those exchanges, I have 2 things. Those exchanges reminded me of when Tate fought Rousey, and Tate was just lighting Rousey up, but every time Rousey touched her, it looked like she changed Miesha Tate's religion every time she hit her, like Catholic, AME.
Uh-huh.
But the second thing is something that you mentioned to me about MMA math, and something you talk about often, especially when it pertains to Valentina Shevchenko.
Right.
And Nunes, as Nunes said, I beat Holly Holm, who's a much better striker. I beat Durandamy, even though you didn't really beat her in striking, but I beat her. And I was able to hold my own with Valentina Shevchenko on the feet.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, I beat a superior technician and superior athlete, but the thing you've always said about Valentina, as good as she is, she's risk averse.
Absolutely.
So if Valentina was willing to take more risks, she could have duplicated this. She has the defensive awareness and the athleticism where she could have faced a jab, but she's risk averse. It's like that GSP. I got to be super clean. I want it super technical.
Yeah, if fighters were like,
let it get messy. That's what being messy.
If fighters were like Gundams and the coach with the right game plan could just step in their head and pilot them, Valentina Shevchenko would destroy Amanda Nunes in these same striking exchanges. But Valentina Shevchenko is Valentina Shevchenko's pilot. So that hasn't been a sentiment I've seen too much of. People are like, man, Nunes never beat Shevchenko convincingly, which of course ignores that Shevchenko also never beat Nunes convincingly. But like, there's no way this fight would have looked like their second fight, because Amanda figured out after their first one, I can't go too hard. Or Shevchenko, she is competitive enough. She can be forced into a position where she will sort of try to beat me up when I get tired.
What did Brian Sand say about Jose Aldo? If you make the champion work, when he fought Chad Mendes,
right.
If you make Valentina fight you, she will actually fight you. Just don't make her fight you.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
So that she did that.
Yeah.
And Valentina's not going to invite risk, which is what Pena did. That's how she won. She came out in round 2. And like, full credit to Julianna Pena, man. She had a rough round 1. She came out in round 2. She wasn't deterred at all. She like immediately got in Nunes' face and started exchanging jabs with her. And as soon as that jab started landing, she started working off the jab. And when Nunes tried to put longer combinations together, she swung with her in the pocket. Shevchenko's not doing that.
With her camp, did you want? Because like when I talked to them, I was like, if you get a takedown near the grappling exchange and you don't have complete control, like your position isn't established, bail out of it, because you can't match with her. If you're up against the cage and you're just going back and forth, bail out. I was like, you should really use your length, attack the legs, attack the body. I know it's going to take energy to stay away from her, but I have more faith in Nunes' ability to stay away from her than I have Nunes' ability to fight. And I don't understand, maybe Nunes, do you think Nunes freaked under the pressure, or do you think she just wasn't directed properly? Because, I mean, as good as ATT is, they don't always make the right call strategy-wise.
No, that's true. I don't know. What do you think, Phil? I mean, I think it's probably a bit of both. I definitely think she freaked out under the pressure. I mean, you could see a change, right? Like, there was a point earlier where, again, I don't think this was an off night necessarily, while I do also think Nunes came in very confident that she really couldn't lose. There was a change.
The first round reinforced that. She looked like a plus 1,000 favorite or whatever she was.
And over the course of round 2, there is a marked change in body language as she realizes that, oh shit, I can't just keep forcing exchanges. I can't just keep accepting these. They're not going my way. Or she's not going away. She's not doing what people are supposed to do when I hit them. Which she did plenty, despite the slip jab, which is Pena's only striking defense at all. Despite that, she still hit Pena a lot. So yeah, I think she freaked out under the pressure. I totally agree.
I think it basically changed from like a lot. I mean, a lot of being an elite fighter, and Amanda Nunes is an elite fighter. That's not like,
sure.
It's not like I don't want to retcon like the stuff to say like, oh, she was never good at all. But like a lot of it is stubbornness. It's refusing to like admit that your opponent is better than you. Like this is genuinely like something.
Yeah.
That you need.
That's common though in camps though, and they lie all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think you genuinely need a lot of stubbornness. You need to be able to say no, this person can't beat me. So I think it was a lot of her just being like, she can't beat me, and I was thinking the same thing. I was like, like Nunes is kind of like she's landing in these exchanges. I mean, like I was remembering like the commentary team were like, "Oh, Pena's landing," and I was like, "Yeah, but like Nunes is hitting her 4 times as hard, and it's not going to matter." And then she just kept landing, and and eventually you were just like, "Is Nunes going to lose this?" And I think she basically came to the same conclusion herself.
Yeah, she tapped to a choke that was not under the chin, without hooks or a body triangle or any form of control, because she was exhausted and hated what was happening. I think that's pretty clear. She really did. She folded and again, like as we talked about in the first segment, there are like breakage conditions for every fighter, but this is the one, man. If you can brawl with Nunes and not lose, She that's what breaks her. That was the case throughout her entire pre-championship career, and she would lose in comebacks all the time, and that's exactly what this was. So
yeah, I just find it. I know they talk about a rematch, but mentally, I feel like this has to be a big blow to her because I mean, you were getting outstruck by a girl who's not a power puncher. And you hit. It's not like you didn't get a chance to get off. You actually landed your best shots. You actually got into grappling exchanges in an advantageous position. You just couldn't finish. It wasn't like she got caught early. She got to do Amanda Nunes things, and it just wasn't good enough. That's hard to come back from.
Yeah. Which isn't to say that, again, she couldn't have the same fight and just sort of win it because, like, I'm not gonna count on Julianna Pena to win those exchanges every time when Nunes is just hitting her, and they're a little too close to 50-50, and Nunes has way more than 50% of the power in those exchanges. But hey,
I will say it does seem to be like a weirdly common thing that like as soon as someone gets any like momentum in the bad women's divisions. And like they get real hype behind them. There has to be some point at which they just like lose in the most legacy torching way imaginable. Like,
I mean,
us talking up Cyborg and then her having the insane this fight, but like at least a sort of vaguely understandable version of it with Nunes.
Just a dick measuring contest.
Obviously like the Rousey loss.
Yeah.
And then like this one, I mean, this one is like I said, this one has to be the funniest so far.
This is truly in the legacy of the Ronda Rousey.
I mean, actually, maybe it's not funnier than Rousey, but like it's even silly.
I think it was. I think this is funnier than Rousey.
I mean, if Pena had looked like a puncher, or because Holm looks like a puncher.
Yeah, and under certain conditions, Holm is a very competent striker. If you fight her kind of fight, Pena is very rarely a competent striker. She should not be outstriking you.
So
the
what
only
I'm
thing
saying,
she beat the hell out of is the English language because she'd be murdering some
Can I say, by the way, this is also a return, speaking of Ronda Rousey, to the like just messy bitches who love drama feel that I think this division should properly have. Yeah, Amanda Nunes is very nice, and she doesn't really say a bad word about anyone. That's an aberration, okay? We return to normal. We return to the days of Ronda Rousey saying women who need lube are gritty kitty bitches, right? The very first thing Pena did after winning the title was go up to the press conference and say, I know Amanda Nunes has kids, but I'm the first mom champ because I actually gave birth to my kids. It was as close as I've ever heard to the white trash classic. At least I raised my kids in a professional sporting context.
That was pretty. Yeah, that was
awesome.
That was interesting.
I was not. I had to admit, I at least wasn't expecting Julianna Pena to say anything good. But even then,
every time they say with no disrespect meant, you know they're going to get real disrespectful.
It's the perfect kind of like tacky, trashy shit to say in your first interview as champion. Love it.
At least but the whole thing means you can really take hope, Connor, because now you know that when Valentina finally loses, it's going to be in the most insane way imaginable. She's gonna be dancing someday, and she's gonna realize that she should try and weaponize the Lesginka. That she's gonna try and turn it into a martial art, and then get back fist KO'd by Courtney Casey.
Absolutely,
it's the only thing that could happen.
We might have missed our chance because Lauren Murphy pulling off the upset would have been.
Yeah.
Now
tell me, Schwan, you love picking underdogs as much as I do. Actually, you're way more willing to pull the trigger than I am. Did you pick Lauren Murphy over Valentina?
No.
All right. Because if you had, then you get a lot less shine for successfully predicting Pena over Nunes.
No, I actually said I liked Pena, but I was like, Pena deserves her shot about as much as Lauren Murphy deserved hers, which isn't very much.
Yeah. All right, well.
I'll just the window, but I got to at least have a parachute. Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to go back to doing parenting stuff. It's just as fun as you've heard it is.
It sounds like a blast. Phil and I are thinking of
I want to thank y'all for letting me be on the show finally. Phil, as I said before, just so the fans can hear it, Phil is an outstanding co-host. He brought another dimension to the show with the laid-back but accurately sharp, razor-sharp wit, back with technical analysis, and it's a great joy hearing him on the show every week. Connor, you started this, and to be honest, a lot of podcasts started when you started, and they didn't last time. So props to you, man. I've known you for years, even back on Sherdog time, and I could have never predicted this. I knew you were smart, and I knew you had a great eye for the sport. I wouldn't have predicted this sort of run. This is like LeBron James run. Year 19, you're still dominating. So thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure, man. And thank you so much for letting me have a chance to be on the show and talk about my views, my perspective, and I also give a shout out to MMAratings.net. They allowed me a platform. They let me write my articles and talk all sorts of shit about camps and fighters without any handcuffs or any jail time for me getting them in trouble. So I thank them, and I appreciate y'all greatly. And just keep up the good work, man.
And any fighters who listen, hire this man to scout your opponents. He knows what the hell he's talking about.
And nothing else, I'll make really funny comments about them that you'll love because all the fighters are like, man, dude, let me write that down. That's great. When they interview me, I got to use that.
It's half scouting report, half roast.
If you ever hear a fighter who's not good at trash talk, all of a sudden become good, be like, let me go through his Twitter. Yeah, that's where you got it from, buddy.
Yeah,
but thank you guys.
This man will not sugarcoat things.
No, he doesn't sugarcoat shit. Although he still comes across way nicer than Kyle McLaughlin, who, Phil, did you notice Kyle had yet another Twitter account banned and sent me another DM asking to help him promote the new one? Schwan's had the same.
One last thing before I go.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, even though I'm rude, I'm careful because I used to train actively. I go every once in a while, drop in a camp, sparring night and just do whatever. A lot of fighters know a lot of people, and people oh, you're that guy who comments on fights. Well, since you're here sparring and you know so much, let's just see what you can do. Oh, well, I didn't think it was going to be one of those nights. So I've had to face some consequences for some of my more direct comments I have made. So that's why I'm a little bit more, I'm still direct, but I'm a little bit more measured because maybe other guys don't go to the gym, but I've had to go there and had to be like, all right, you said it. Let's get on the mat and let's see what's going on.
Well, I said it before. I'll say it again. You are and always have been crafty. I suspect that's why you've survived in those gyms and on social media and even way back on the Striking Technique forum on Sherdog.com like 15 years ago.
When I'm sparring those guys, it's literal survival. They're like, hey, you're not terrible. You're not that bad. You mean for a fighter? No, for a regular person. For a fighter, you're horrible. But for a regular person, you're pretty nice. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah,
I'll take what I got.
You could do worse. All right, man. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you on. We will have to do it again sometime pretty soon.
Thank you again. Nice to meet you, Phil, or over the internet. But thank you very nice. Very nice to meet you, man. Great fan of your work. Keep it up, man.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic.
Yes, sir. Have a good one.
Sir.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Thank you once again to Schwan Humes for having us on. Oh, by the way, I didn't shout out his Twitter handle. But the guy always has insightful things to say about MMA. And like I said, we have been talking to each other online since way back when Sherdog was still the hot place to be for online MMA fans. Actually, I guess it was probably the underground. Sherdog was like the lame mainstream one, wasn't it?
Yep.
He's at Black Jordan Breen, of course. Black spelled B-L-A-K, which is really a screen name on par with Evil Greg Jackson.
Yeah, we do definitely have the, like, old, obscure, in-joke screen names.
Calls back to a
just
time
survived for longer than they should have.
It makes me think of, I posted, that gif of Amanda Nunes just, like, eating 4 jabs in a row. It's very funny. And somebody said, it reminds me of this classic. And they posted, you could probably guess, Sean Pearson jabbing up Matt Riddle.
Oh, yeah. It really is, isn't it?
And Black Jordan Breen, Evil Greg Jackson, these names call back to a time when that was like a go-to reference, which is bygone, because a bunch of people were like, what is this fight? Who are these people? Wow, that bald guy keeps hitting him with the jab. Like, this used to be the go-to example of jabbing as defense in MMA. Anyway, I'm avoiding talking about this main event because I don't particularly care about it. Derek Lewis, Chris Daukaus. The far more interesting fight is the co-main, so we'll get on to that pretty quickly. But what do you make of this, Phil? Lewis, Daukaus. Daukaus is a cop. No one likes him, but unfortunately he's quite good for a heavyweight. So,
yeah, I guess he's all right. I don't know. I don't really like him. He just seems like, I mean, even aside from the whole cop thing. I mean, Sam Vimes is a cop.
That's right. That's right.
But it's just that, like, he's just a boxer, and he doesn't seem to have any ideas of doing much else other than, like, waiting for his opponent to fall into his game. And admittedly, it's heavyweight. They probably will. Mm-hmm. But like, what if Derek Lewis just, like, kicks him a bunch? What's he going to do?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I mean, he's not a particularly deep boxer either. Like, that fight with Shamil Abdurakhimov, he was not necessarily winning that. He just, like...
He just keyed into the fact that Abdurakhimov backs away with his hands down after exchanges.
Pretty much. His adjustment was about as complex as... when he hits you, run after him throwing 2 punches. Mm-hmm. That was pretty much how he beat him. Which, fair play to you for doing it. Trusting in your durability, being confident, certainly hitting like a truck. These are very important things in the heavyweight division. but it doesn't bespeak a lot of depth, which isn't to say Derek Lewis has a lot of depth either, but he does have a very different style from many heavyweights. Weirdly negative, does throw a lot of bizarre kicks. Instead of like backing away with his hands down, he will just go all the way back to the fence and just appear to be a target and then hit you when you try to exchange with him. It's, to me, a very open question who wins this fight. Daukaus is an up-and-comer. The instinct is to pick him, but he's just not that tricky. So, feels like a coin flip, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, Derek Lewis is still pretty young and growing as a heavyweight. Like, he's 36. Still got like 10 years left at the elite level.
Yeah.
How old is Daukaus? Is freakishly young, right?
He's 32. Yes, freakishly young.
Wow. A babe in arms. I don't know. It's going to be dreadful, isn't it? It's going to be really bad.
Probably, up until someone gets knocked out. Yeah.
I mean, at least Daukaus has some kind of measure of he showed some measure of insistent pressure against Abdurakhimov. It's just a question of like whether he's going to be willing to do that against a puncher like Lewis.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to take Lewis. I don't trust Daukaus, really. I think he just doesn't like. If he did one of the things that Lewis struggles with, if he like kicked the legs or worked the body or those two things, or was like a real just like a real consistent pressure threat, then I'd be like, oh yeah, maybe. Or if he just had a really good jab. But he doesn't. So I'm just gonna pick Lewis, but I just expect it to be awful.
Yeah, I think I agree. If he had a great jab, if he, the pressure is a good sign. Certainly. I mean, Derek Lewis is going to put his back to the fence. If you can retain that confidence after Derek Lewis hits you, or even takes a swing and you feel the breeze whipping past your head, which seems to have the same effect on many people. If you can retain that confidence, again, it is like a coin flip. You're in fact a little better than a coin flip because Lewis is putting himself in a terrible position. And hey, Daukaus has been knocked out before. I struggled to find his fight with Ozuna Anyanwu, who's certainly a big hitter, but he got knocked out in the second round of that fight. So it's possible that Lewis's power does have that effect on him. I'll take Daukaus just because I hate myself, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Like, I mean, this is the thing: is that Lewis has had, almost every fight in a row that he's had in recent memory, apart from Blagoy Ivanov. He's just looked like complete shit until he's won.
Well, he's Derek Lewis.
So I mean, eventually, what happened in the Cyril Gane fight just happens is that he just looks like shit and then he just loses and you're like, oh yeah, that can happen. Sometimes you just keep losing and that's the end. Yeah,
Curtis Blades isn't a particularly deep or comfortable striker, and as long as he just stayed striking, like this is the main point in Daukaus' favor, he's not going to wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
If he does, he's dead. That's it. He's dead. So I hope he does. But
that at least will add some comedy to it.
Absolutely.
If he just starts tuning Derek Lewis up and then takes him down, and then he stands up and suddenly realizes that he's exhausted and gets bludgeoned.
All right, so I'm taking Daukaus. You're taking Lewis. Who cares? Let's talk about the co-main event. This one is genuinely very interesting. Stephen Thompson, Bilal Muhammad. Not the only interesting fight in this card, by the way. I think we're going to talk about more of these next week. We've got more time because there's no card next weekend. So, Sun Sao Simone is probably going to be depressing, but could be interesting. Lemos Hill is very interesting, I think. Carlos Diego Ferreira versus Mateusz Gamrot. I like that. I even like Cub Swanson, Darren Elkins. It's just like a weird old man fight.
Yeah.
But Thompson Muhammad, that's the last one we're going to talk about today. First, surface layer read, Phil.
It's a terrible matchup for Belal Muhammad.
Yeah.
He's always been a pretty undersized welterweight. He's fighting a giant welterweight who's very quick on his feet. Muhammad's main advantage is that he's quick on his feet, and obviously Thompson is also very fast, but is also much bigger than him. Thompson spends lots of the fight in southpaw. Belal Muhammad is notably terrible at fighting southpaws. To the extent that his corner were "You did it! You beat a southpaw!"
Yeah.
After he beat
an
aging Damian Maia. But the obvious balancing factor is that you have to ask how shut is Stephen Thompson at this point.
Yeah.
Because he did not look good against Belal Muhammad.
No.
Sorry, Belal. What am I saying? He didn't look good against
Gilbert Burns.
Yeah, Gilbert Burns.
Yeah. Now, granted, Gilbert
Burns was also
Burns,
someone that I thought would be a pretty easy matchup again for Thompson, but
right.
Gilbert Burns, that style has to break down at some point.
And Gilbert Burns did one thing that we have always lauded Belal Muhammad for, which is he was willing to sort of change his core approach and have an ugly, effective fight.
Mm-hmm.
He went in there and was like, okay, I'm going to get hit. Just run through with the most hideous punches of all time so you can grab onto him. He did that on several key occasions. Now, one advantage he definitely has over Muhammad is that he is a superb athlete. Belal is not. He's not the worst athlete in the division by any stretch. And he's super tough. I think he's more durable than Gilbert, but he's not a great athlete. But he does arguably have a considerably more depth to his striking on the feet. Against a right-hander. The southpaw thing is really that troubles me more than anything else. Is that even against Damian Maia, Belal was notably stressed about fighting a southpaw. He just is not comfortable against them. His game is so built around his jab, and he does not have the depth of skill in that one very specific area to know how to effectively hand fight and step past and around the southpaw jab to get his in. And without that, yeah, it's a lot of just winging left hooks, which seems like a terrible idea against Stephen Thompson. Albeit not as terrible idea as it would have been. Gilbert Burns landed a few winging left hooks.
Yep.
And he does have the wrestling. I mean, if I'm Belal Muhammad, I look at that Gilbert Burns fight and I think I can do that. Got 3 rounds to work. Yeah. I don't get tired easily. I can push a pace. I can take a huge shot. I think that is an eminently winnable fight for Belal Muhammad, even though fundamentally Stephen Thompson at his best should be a terrible matchup for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's also he combines being quite a quick-footed fighter with being actually quite a decent low kicker.
That too. I was going to mention.
And that's something which no one has still, as something we sort of talked about with Stephen Thompson, has really tried much against Stephen Thompson. The exception of Anthony Pettis in one of his most plodding performances. No one's ever really tried, chasing Thompson down and kicking him in the legs.
Mm-hmm.
Which definitely seems like it could work. I mean, it's just the fact that Muhammad just doesn't seem to have the physical firepower anywhere to make this fight work for him. But I think if he wins, it's going to simultaneously be a great performance and also just confirmation that Stephen Thompson had a shockingly long career for for someone with the style that he had. But that career is really getting to its end.
Yeah, I'm gonna. The real question I have to ask myself now, Phil, since I insist on consistency, is: do I want to let Zane have a pick over me? Because if I pick Muhammad just for fun, I got to pick him on the vivisection too.
You do, yes.
Whatever. Who gives a shit, right? It's fight.
What would Schwan do?
That is a very good question. Belal Muhammad I think is perfectly capable of accepting an ugly, frankly, probably a much less entertaining fight than it would be if he loses.
Yeah.
I think he's perfectly capable of accepting that in order to get the smart strategic win. Getting in Stephen Thompson's face, wrestling him, even with limited success, just grabbing onto single legs, making him work defensively, hitting him with knees to the legs. I think he can do that. So
and
fuck
just
it.
like I said, just being a quick person who's like actually generally pretty good at parrying strikes.
Oh yeah,
with that are aimed at his head. It'll allow him to stay comparatively safe. In the points where he's not exchanging with Stephen Thompson, it will allow him to stay comparatively safe at range because Thompson doesn't particularly like to lead, but if he's got someone who's just sort of there, like a Luque or honestly a Masvidal, he will light people up a bit.
Yeah,
but I think he will struggle to do that a bit more against I'll remember the name, Muhammad.
I think so too. Yeah, and I think it will be even if the game plan is perfect, will be not a fun experience for Bilal winning it.
Yeah, I just think it's a tough matchup for him. But I would be happy to see him win it in the same way that I was happy to see him beat Maia, even though I love Maia.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just like Muhammad deserves some shine. He's a cool fighter.
Yeah, and you always got to love a guy who takes his time and puts effort into preparation.
Yeah.
So few MMA fighters seem to do that, to do the really involved opponent-specific preparation. That's kind of Muhammad's whole thing. And at the end of the day, he's younger. He's still got his durability. We saw, he was still losing to Jeff Neal about halfway through the third round and then started to put it on him. And then, got kicked in the head and was still coming back, end of the fight. Got up off his back, was putting it on Jeff Neal, was all over him. I think maybe this is the right point in Stephen Thompson's career where just that kind of dogged willingness is enough to catch him when he's not being careful. He is old. All right. Well, that's that. Again, quite a few other interesting fights in this card, actually. It's not a bad card to end the year. I look forward to talking about a lot of these and hopefully finding a couple gems that, like Nunes Pena, I do not see the interest in them now, but will have interest in them after the fact. So we'll be back next week to catch you up on that. Of course, either the next week after that or the following week, it's going to be the Handies, 2021 Handies. So, we're talking worst brain thinking, folks. We're talking the oh shit, that worked award. We're talking the Rebush Chalice. All right? If Bilal Muhammad beats Stephen Thompson, my man is up there. He's in the conversation. We are going to have a stacked slate of awards for an incredibly bizarre, odd year in the UFC and MMA more generally. And, that's what you have to look forward to. We'll talk to you next week. Until then, once again, thanks to Schwan Humes. And if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands. Oh, I forgot to do our Twitter handles.
You're a monster, they'll remember.
Boxing Bush, Evil Greg Jackson. Sign up for the Patreon.
Yeah, that's the kind of salesman-like patter people expect.
All right, man. I am ready to stop talking and give my throat a rest.